topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, Tampa. Welcome to another Ask the Experts. We are right here in cold South Florida, and this is going to be a great show today. We've got the top wealth management firm in Florida, and we are so excited about it. They've been with us for several years. They do 2 shows a month. And I got to tell you, these shows go by so fast, basically because they're so good, they're so interesting. And let me introduce you to Ray Ferrara with Provise Wealth Management. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Nice to be with you once again.
Yeah, listen, you're in Tampa. You've had bad weather there, and it's been crazy weekend, but we're here, and the weekends just aren't long enough, are they, Ray?
I think if we had to only work 2 days and the weekend was 5 days, we'd all still think they were too short.
Well, what is going on with the stock market?
Well, Steve, we have seen 7 weeks in a row of the stock market having been up in a positive direction. We saw the market fall dramatically in the late summer and the early fall, retracing some of the gains that it had had earlier in the year. But since late October and the beginning of November, the market has been in a straight upward trajectory. In fact, 7 weeks of straight up is something that hasn't happened for close to 20 years. That's how unusual this is. And it's not going to last. It's nice to have it happen, but there will be some reversion to the mean in the coming months. But they're that's the normal part of the market. Is I've often described the market over the years. It's like a person walking up a flight of stairs with a yo-yo in their hands. Our tendency is to watch the yo-yo going up and down and lose sight of the fact that the man is walking up the stairs. And we've got to keep that in mind during the next couple of months, where we'll probably see some continued volatility into 2024. But at the end of the day, 2024 is most likely to produce a positive result, lacking any geopolitical issue that we just have no control over.
Ray, most of the emails that we get for your show all have the same questions on there. And I'll just kind of give you a basic of what most of them say. They want to know why that the news media keeps saying that the economy is getting better. The stock market shows that. But you go to the grocery store, or you go to buy a home, or you go to get gas, and everything is up. What do we listen to?
Well, there's no question that the market has the economy, let me talk about the economy, that the economy has done better in 2023 than any of us thought that it would this time last year, ourselves included. Most people were calling for a recession in 2023. We said there would be if there was a recession, we thought it would more likely be in 2024 than it would be in 2023. So we weren't surprised by the fact that there wasn't a recession in 2023, but we didn't expect the economy to be as good as it was, particularly early in the year. But during that same period of time that the economy continued in a positive direction, we had inflation that at one point peaked over 9%, November of 2022, I believe it was, and has slowly been working its way down. And that's a good thing. It just means that prices aren't going up as fast as they once were. They're still going up. But none of the prices, other than perhaps for food and energy, which are very volatile, have really come down. And so the lingering effect of the price of, as an example, an automobile being significantly higher today than it was 2 years ago, that's what people are seeing and feeling each time they're spending their money. You know, it is hard to go to the grocery store and to buy food and other supplies anymore for less than $100.
Right.
And you know, that's a dramatic increase over where we were 2 years ago. You know, I had some guests this past weekend. My niece and her husband grilled some steaks on the grill. They were filet mignon, and enough for 4 people. It was $60. I mean, you know, it's shocking to think how expensive things have become and stayed. And so it's the lingering effect of those higher prices that people are feeling every day as they purchase things that makes them feel like things aren't as good as they might be. The other side of that is kind of now a double whammy, where salaries were once trying to catch up with inflation. The increase in salaries now and in incomes has slowed dramatically as inflation has come down. And so where people were feeling very good about bumps that they got at one time, they're not seeing those today. And the best example is with our Social Security system. January of 23, we saw Social Security benefits go up over 8%. January of 24, we're going to see them go up just a little over 3%. And those are the difference between what reality is and what people are feeling. And, you know, you can't argue with people's feelings. You can argue with logic and everything else, but you can't argue when people feel a certain way. And that's what's really kind of going on today.
What's going on with gas prices? I know here in Southeast Florida, they are, compared to 2 years ago, they're probably not, but they're actually going down.
They are indeed, and they're going down for a couple of reasons. And again, it all comes back to simple, basic economics: supply and demand. With the economy slowing, as it has over the last 6 months, people are using their cars less than they did before when gas prices were really high. And so that consumption piece was going down. Are using hybrid cars and electrical vehicles than have ever happened in the past, and those can continue to weigh on the sale of gasoline. And then you look at the other side. Even though there have been cuts in the Middle East and by the OPEC plus bloc to oil being produced, the United States is still the largest single producer of oil in the world. Everybody still thinks it's, you know, Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia once was, but it's not anymore. And clearly, if we're not number one, we're a close number two.
Right.
So we're still able to maintain our own economy. You'll see it go back up again. It's bound to happen as people, again, if you look at the sales of vehicles, people are not buying economic gas-powered cars. They're buying trucks. They're buying SUVs. They're buying things that do consume a lot of fuel, and we'll see the prices go back up. But it's all about supply and demand, as it always is in a free economy.
Okay. So last week, the Feds met for the last time for this year. Do you see any more bumps in the interest rates at all?
Well, thank goodness it was their last meeting for the year. It seems that every week you and I have this year have been talking about the Fed, and it would be really good to have them not be in the news for for a while. So here's the interesting thing: the Fed met last week. They paused it again. They didn't raise interest rates, and they said that they would continue to be data dependent, which has been kind of their standard line. But at the moment, they didn't see a need for any increasing interest rates. And in fact, they said that there was a possibility that they could cut rates next year as many as 3 times. And that set the markets off last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in a hugely positive direction.
Yes.
Now, here is the craziness of the markets. There was no new information in that statement. We have short memories on Wall Street. The fact of the matter is, back in June of this year, the Federal Reserve said that they would continue to raise interest rates being data dependent, which they did a few more times after June, and that they foresaw 4 rate cuts in 2024. So, I mean, this was 6 months ago. The Fed talked about cutting interest rates in 2024. This was no news. In fact, it even backed off because earlier they had said that there would be 4 rate cuts, and now they said there would be 3. And they made it also very clear that those rate cuts were likely to be later in the year, not in the near term. And yet the markets are pricing in a rate cut as actually next month, not with a high percentage, but there are some that still believe rates will get cut next month. We don't believe that. The bet is that they'll get cut in March. We don't believe that. We have continued to subscribe to the higher interest rates for a longer period of time. We think the earliest that we might see the first rate cut would be sometime in the June timeframe. Again, it's going to depend on what's going on in the world and what's happening here in the United States. So the good news is mortgage rates fell below 7% for the first time in half a year. So that was good news. The 10-year or the 30-year Treasury has dropped from 5% earlier this fall, now down to about 4%. That's a dramatic move in the bond markets. That makes the Fed's job more difficult because people are just anticipating those rate cuts. As I said, we're not looking for the first rate cut, lacking some major event occurring. We don't see it occurring at the earliest until June of next year.
Ray, I don't know if you remember. I do remember this. Maybe 2-3 months ago on this show, I thought things were looking really gloomy for the economy. But you had a little bit of a rosier picture. And I was going to myself, where does he see this at? I don't. And you turned out to be right.
Well, yeah, as I think it was Yogi Berra who was famous for saying, predictions would be easy if they weren't about the future. So one has to be careful, quote, around predictions. Steve, Provise has been helping people with investment management and financial planning now since 1986. I've been in the business since the early 70s. There isn't much I haven't seen. And the one constant that I continue to see over time, not all the time, but over time, is an economy that moves in a positive direction due to entrepreneurs, due to innovation, due to technology, due to American grit, if you will, and our free enterprise system. And so I always have a glass half full attitude about the economy and the market, because over time it's proven that it is going to rebound even when things look the gloomiest. As I said, we're looking for a very volatile market during the first part of next year. And volatility doesn't mean always down. It means up too.
Right.
But given, it's not unreasonable to expect, given the fact that the market has been up for 7 weeks in a row, it's not unusual for it to go down and, kind of take a breather for a little while. But, as we look ahead to 2024, we think that 2024 will be a positive year in the markets. This tremendous run-up that we have had so far this year, and particularly during the last 7 weeks, may have borrowed a little bit of that growth from next year. But don't forget, we still have 9 trading days left this year, and a lot can happen in 9 days.
Yeah.
In a volatile market. And the other thing I think the investors really need to keep in mind is the fact that a good 80% of the market gains this year have come from the Magnificent Seven. The Alphabets, the Netflix, the Microsofts, the Nvidias, Tesla, Amazon, and I'm forgetting one of them in there. And there's still 493 other stocks in the S&P 500 that haven't had the same kind of run that those stocks have had. So we're looking at in this coming year, we're anticipating that those stocks may continue to do well, but they're not going to do as well in 24 as they did in 23. And there are other places to look for growth in this coming year out of those other 493. Plus, I have to tell you that given that the fact that the S&P 500 is selling at a multiple of about 20 times right now, historically it ought to be at 15 or 16 times, would tell you that the market is slightly overvalued, which shouldn't surprise you since 7 stocks have created 80% of the growth of the market so far this year. And they're, in our opinion, slightly overvalued to see that retraction. But what we do see, in addition to those other 493 potential stocks next year, are the fact that small cap stocks and mid cap stocks, the multiple on those are significantly lower. They're a lot cheaper than many of the big cap stocks are. And so we would expect to see some awfully good growth there. The other thing that could propel the market this next year is this month, investors had more money in money market funds than ever before. And they had become very comfortable earning that 4.5%, 5% in many of those money market funds. But now those yields are starting to come down. And if that money gets freed up out of those money market accounts and starts to find its way towards equity markets, investors have to be careful that we don't get much further ahead of where we are at the present time until earnings have a chance to catch up. So with all of that in mind, we see 2024 as a reasonable market, probably led by small and mid-cap companies as opposed to large cap companies where there's more opportunity. And in the long run, again, don't look at the yo-yo. Look at the person climbing the flight of stairs, because I feel very confident that 5 years from now, the market will have produced a very reasonable return over the next five years, just as it has on a consistent basis in the past.
You know, Ray, I bet you we get 2 or 3 text messages a week, all because of your show, that all ask the same question. And they want to know how you feel about silver and gold. Can you touch on that just a few minutes?
Did you say silver and gold?
Yes.
Well, both of those metals are very, very different. First of all, silver has commercial use, where gold has no commercial use at all, outside of jewelry. But silver is used in a lot of processes in manufacturing, et cetera. So a lot of the price of silver is going to be built around the supply and demand as to what's going to be needed. As it relates to gold, gold has languished in a very broad trading range for a long period of time. It broke out of that range this fall, and is seeing some resurgence right now as interest rates are coming down. The price of gold is going up. Gold has traditionally been viewed as a safe haven, as a place to go when there are world events that are not positive, as a place to go when inflation is raging. But that probably was once true, but it's very hard to make that argument anymore today, in view of its lack of progression in the more recent times of inflation. On the other hand, it's an asset class. It's a recognized class. It is a storehouse of value. And for someone to own some gold, we don't believe necessarily in physically owning the gold. Unless you're going to do that, do it with gold coins, and take physical possession of it. There are plenty of ways to play the gold markets through exchange traded funds, mining funds, et cetera, or stocks that are out there. And so if you want to have a small part of your portfolio in precious metals, fine. I don't have any problem with that. But to make it more than 5% of one's portfolio, I think ends up in the long run being a very speculative bet.
Ray, I probably have 50 more questions. We're just about out of time now. First of all, I know we want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. You won't be back with us again until January, but I got to tell you, we so appreciate you, Ray. Your knowledge is just amazing, and I can't thank you enough. And by some of the letters we get, our listeners can't thank you enough. We want to wish you and your family a very happy holiday and happy and healthy New Year.
Well, Steve, thank you very much, and of course, right back at you. And just before we leave, I just want to encourage everybody that this is a present, but it's a present that we have all year long, and that is anybody who wants to learn more about Provise and spend some time with us. All they have to do is call our offices with the number scrolling across the bottom. A complimentary 1-hour consultation with us, either in Clearwater, Tampa, or by Zoom. So no matter where you are in the United States, we can work with you and help you. In fact, we have clients in 34 states. So take advantage of that 1-hour complimentary time together. and help us help you find a great way to start 2024 on the right financial foot. In the meantime,
give everybody the phone number for those listening on radio now.
Okay,
and you can't see the screen.
It's 800-633-3049. 800-633-3049. Or if you didn't have paper and pencil handy, or you happen to be riding in the car or something like that, just go to provise.com, provise.com. Get all of our information. You can learn more about us, and we would be delighted to help you get your financial life kickstarted in 2024.
Ray, thanks again. Merry holiday, and we'll see you again next year.
We'll look forward to it, Steve. In the meantime, Happy New Year.
Yes. Thanks, Ray. That's right.
See you later.
For our Provise Wealth Management, we are so lucky to have him. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about personal injury law, auto accidents, slips and falls. We'll be right back.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
And we are back. I guess we are waiting for our next guest. They should be coming along. Sure, oh, there they are. Oh, both of them. That's wonderful. So, good morning, ladies.
Good morning, Steve.
I got to tell you, I've got a surprise for you today. We have gotten so many questions in the last 3 weeks. And if you don't mind, I am going to identify these letters with the person's name, where they're from, and let you answer them.
Perfect.
These are all questions from our audience. But before we get started, tell people, you've got a great personal injury firm. We're here with Lauren Calta and Angela Zervos, and I'm telling you, they are one of the finest personal injury attorneys. I'm going to let you tell everybody about the firm.
Well, Steve, good morning again. Lauren and I have been practicing law since the 90s, and we both worked at different firms during our careers. Lauren worked as a prosecutor in New York. I worked as a public defender here in Florida in Pinellas County, and then we both managed to make our way into the civil practice arena, where we focused exclusively on personal injury. And that's been since the 90s. So that's a lot of years of exclusive practice in the civil arena, especially in personal injury. And so we managed to get together in early 2017 and formed our own law firm, Zervos and Calta, and we are based in Pinellas County, but we practice throughout the state.
Well, I got to tell you, I am so glad that we have you. Lauren, tell us about your background.
Well, I went to Brooklyn Law School. I worked for the Kings County District Attorney's Office for 3 years, where I prosecuted felonies and misdemeanors, did some appeal work, and then came to Florida in the early 90s and took and passed the bar here. And that was my venture into personal injury arena, if you will, and I've been doing it ever since. And like Angela said, in 2017, we came together to form Zervos and Calta, but I had the pleasure and blessing of working with Angela for 3 years, almost 3 years, right? Before that, at a firm that she was a partner with. And we looked at each other one day and said, "You ready?" And we took the jump, and there's been no looking back ever since.
Well, I've got all these questions here that I want to get to. I'm going to start off with Ken. He said, what are different types of liabilities in regards to swimming pools?
That's an interesting one. Swimming pools. Well,
I guess if someone got hurt in your pool
Yeah.
that was
Well,
at your,
sure. Well, under the law, a swimming pool would be categorized as something called an attractive nuisance, meaning that it would attract people, but it's also something that would be dangerous. And so, of course, local government agencies, usually the building departments, require certain codes that you adhere to, that, if you have a pool, that you have to have a fence, you have to make sure that that fence closes and locks, because if a wandering child in the neighborhood sees a gate open and goes in, you as the homeowner would be responsible, God forbid anything happened to that child in your pool. But, there's also issues surrounding what the homeowner does to prevent people from entering their property. Like, for instance, putting no trespassing signs up. If you put a no trespassing sign up and you've got a gate and the gate locks and you have children who climb the fence, despite those warnings, I would say that that would be a very difficult claim to succeed against the homeowner. I think that that's what, as a homeowner, you have to do, is make sure you take all the precautions to prevent people from entering your property and, getting into the pool and perhaps drowning. There's also the issue, I think we've heard some issues, Lauren and I've seen some cases over the years where people have a party and there's a lot of drinking going on, and somebody decides to do something stupid like dive headfirst into the pool because they're drunk. And then they try to sue the homeowner. And again, I think that is a situation where it becomes very difficult to prevail against the homeowner, because the person who jumped into the pool and ended up breaking their neck, or God forbid worse, pretty much took that action on their own. I don't think it's anything that really could have been prevented by the homeowner. But there's all sorts of, every case would be different, Steve. So we'd have to look at a case by case on that.
Marty wants to know if you're, a lot of these I've learned from doing your show. I could probably answer them, but I think it's best that you do it. Like Marty wants to know if your consultations are free.
Marty, our consultations are always free. You'll see most attorneys that do personal injury work, unlike family law or criminal law, where you probably need a retainer. Our consultations are always free, and our fee is what's called a contingency fee, which means that we only get paid if you recover either through a settlement or a verdict. Our fee is a percentage of that recovery. If it's pre-suit, meaning a lawsuit didn't need to be filed, it would be 33 1/3%. And if it's after a lawsuit is filed and the time has passed for the defendant to answer the complaint, our fee would go to 40%. And those are standard contingency fees that are governed by the Florida Bar.
But when you have to go to court, there's a lot more out-of-pocket money than if you're just settling out of court.
Well, yeah, that's the costs involved. We are entitled to get our costs separate from our,
Yes.
but we do front all the cost involved in litigation, which, if you're going to trial, could easily land you, depending on the case, between $50,000 and $100,000 in costs. And unlike other firms, Angela and I do not charge interest on those costs. We just seek to get back what we paid. We don't charge the client any interest for the money that was laid out.
I just don't understand. I've actually shared with you that my son was in an auto accident and thought he was such a great negotiator that he would do it himself with a contingency basis. Why would someone not want to hire an attorney? You don't have to write a check that day you sit down. And these insurance companies are very good at what they do.
Steve, yeah, we see a lot of that as well. Like, why do I need an attorney? The insurance company adjusters called me. They're so nice. They told me that they'll help me, but they're obviously trained to do that. And their goal is to save money. their goal is not to fork it out. And so, we try to get people to understand that early on. But, sometimes they just have to experience the shenanigans, I like to call them, from the insurance company before they come back and they say, you were right. But yeah, when you understand that the insurance company it's a business, and the dollar is the bottom line there, and they've got to do what they can to save the money, not pay the policy limits, get recorded statements from people where hopefully, where they hope that they're going to get somebody to say, yeah, I'm not hurt that bad, or or I feel okay. And then they record that, they document it. And then if the person ends up coming back to make a claim, they use that statement against them. So it's always really good, at least after you see a medical provider, to speak with an attorney. So the attorney can at least give you the warnings. I mean, you don't have to sign up with the attorney, at least consult with them, find out what your rights are and what to expect if you want to handle it yourself moving forward.
Here's a question from Robert in Tampa. Are there statute of limitations when it comes to auto accidents?
Yes, there are. And it most recently changed with the tort reform that was passed into legislation back in March of this year. It used to be 4 years statute of limitations, meaning from the date of the accident, you had 4 years to either settle your claim or file your lawsuit. And the bill, House Bill 837, reduced that time from 4 years to 2 years. So it cut your statute of limitations in half. So you really should consult with an attorney sooner versus than later, because if those 2 years pass and you don't either settle your case or have a lawsuit filed, then you are forever barred from bringing your claim.
Okay. Here's this has got to be one of your relatives. This is Peter. He said, I'm really enjoying your show. I just wish it came on more. It's so informative. I actually told a friend who was in an auto accident about your firm. If a person is in an auto accident, do you refer the type doctor or chiropractor they need?
Well, what we do is we ask our clients if they have somebody in mind that they use and they would like to use. And if they don't and they ask us for a recommendation, we usually give them a few names as opposed to just directing them to one particular doctor, and we let them choose, who they would like to use. But we have a pretty good knowledge base of which physicians will actually handle auto accident or slip and fall cases. There's a lot of doctors that don't want to get dragged into these cases. They tell the clients if they call, we don't do auto accidents, especially primary care doctors. They don't want to get involved because they think they're going to get dragged into the courtroom.
Yes.
But the funny thing is they're going to get dragged into the courtroom anyway, because if they were the treating physician or primary care doctor before, somebody had a car accident, we're going to bring them in either in a deposition or to trial and ask those doctors, whether or not our client had any problems before with any sort of injury. So, they try to avoid it, but they're not real successful. But in answer to your question, we do make recommendations, usually give a few names and let the clients choose. And sometimes, they find somebody on their own that they want to see.
Here's a question from Millie. Love your show. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to ask questions. How do I know if I have whiplash?
So the only way that you really know what your diagnosis is if you go to a doctor. And I know I speak for Angela on this too. We hate that term whiplash because it desensitizes the nature of the injury. It's an actual injury to your neck. In the muscles and the ligaments, it tears, it stretches, it forms scar tissue, it prevents range of motion as fluidly as before. But when you just say, "Oh, I have whiplash," everybody has that vision in mind of somebody, trying to milk a personal injury claim or wearing a collar and a cane. And then once the case settles, they take off their collar and they throw out their cane and they're doing jumping jacks. It just has a negative connotation to it in our industry. But certainly if you're experiencing pain in your neck, in your back, you go to a doctor and they will diagnose ultimately whether you have injury to your muscles, to your ligaments, to your discs. You could have bulging or herniated discs that wind up impinging the nerves that run through the spinal cord, which could lead to pains down your arms, down your legs, numbness and tingling in your hands and your feet. Never self-diagnose. Always go to the doctor.
Does whiplash show up on an X-ray?
No.
Okay. Here's Christine. Said, I didn't feel any pain after my auto accident. Should I still see a chiropractor?
I'm going to say the answer to that is a no. If you're not having any pain, there'd be no reason to go to a chiropractor, quite honestly. And, even chiropractors are, they're physicians if chiropractic. They're not medical doctors where they can't prescribe any sort of medications. But, there's really no reason to see any sort of a physician if you're not having any pain whatsoever.
Here's Marcus. This is a good question. Thanks for allowing us to ask questions in this format. I really enjoy your show. How do they determine how much a case is worth?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. So the value of a claim depends on so many different factors. You have to look at the accident itself. Was it something where, it was a real severe impact, lots of twisted metal, broken glass, or if there were symptoms right away, you felt neck pain, back pain, you couldn't move a leg, you broke a bone, you hit your head and had a concussion. What were your initial symptoms or injuries? What type of medical treatment that you received? If you only went to a chiropractor for therapy versus treating with an orthopedic or a neurosurgeon and undergoing either epidural steroid injections or medial branch blocks and radiofrequency ablation, or ultimately surgery, certainly all those go into a pot, if you will, to help develop the value of your claim. Someone who just treats with a chiropractor, their claim is going to be worth a lot less than somebody who needs and undergoes surgery because it's a more severe injury. So it's really based on the extent of your injury, Steve, and how that progresses or develops over time or stems from the accident.
If I can add to that, Steve, in addition to just the nature of the injury, I think that the client themselves, the effects on their life. Sometimes, we've got a father who was hurt and he can't work anymore. And he's got young children. And the story that is told is, I can't play with my kids anymore. I can't work to provide, food for them. He ends up losing his job because he can't go back to work. He can't play with his children. Their life has been turned upside down. Those are additional factors that the insurance company doesn't always consider, but they should consider that, because I think that when you take a case like that and you put it in front of 6 people in a courtroom who are sitting there for jury duty, and they are parents themselves and they get up and they understand how important it is to work. When you put somebody like a client like that in front of them, they're going to understand how traumatizing and how devastating the effects of the accident were. And they're going to award the client a lot more money than I think that the insurance company would ever offer. The insurance companies, they look at everything through kind of tunnel vision. well, the bills are only this much and your client didn't really have surgery. So, here's $10,000. Yeah. I mean, that's how they evaluate cases. And then Lauren and I've got to step up and say, you have to understand, this is a 30-something-year-old parent. He's lost his job. He was making this much money. The family is broke. The family had to move. They had to sell their house. All of those other factors come into play. And Lauren and I, what we do is we get to know our client and we get to understand what they like to do, what their responsibilities are in their home. And we present a story to the insurance company. So it's so much more than just what treatment did they have.
What about the judge? Does that have anything? Does that determine? I mean, are every judge, are they different? Or they basically give out the same? Does that matter who the judge is in the case?
Typically, you're asking for a jury trial, so the judge
Okay.
doesn't have any input into the amount awarded. With regards to, are they different? Judges are human beings, right? So
Right.
every human is different. But I would like to think that the majority, if not nearly all, of the judges follow the law and try at least to make the correct rulings based on our arguments to them and the law that we present to them as precedent. But with regards to the amount that's recovered, unless it's a bench trial, Steve, they don't get any input.
Here's a great question. If a person isn't, this is from Lori, if a person isn't happy with their attorney, can they fire them and hire another one?
They absolutely can do that. What happens is we see that a lot, and we usually ask the potential clients when they call us, they ask us for advice. And what we tell them is that while they are still represented, we can't give them any advice. And we can't because they have an attorney. So we're not permitted to step on their toes. But we usually ask these potential clients, well, what's the reason why you're not happy? And then we tell them, look, you have a couple of options. One, try and work it out with the attorney. Call them, see if you can't put your issues on the table, work it out with them. And if you feel like you can't, then you can simply just send a letter to that attorney and discharge them, and then retain us. One of the concerns that they have is that they're going to have to pay both attorneys. And
Right.
They do actually have to pay both attorneys. But Lauren and I typically, not all the time, but typically, I'll say most of the time, we will agree to pay the other attorney's lien. They will put a lien on the case for the time that they spent, and we will pay them out of our fee when the case is resolved. So we try to do a favor to the client by not charging them, a second fee. We don't want to do that to them.
Well, you're not going to believe this. I had about 10 more questions from listeners, but as always, your show goes by so fast. First, let's give everybody your phone number and website for those who are listening on radio.
727-937-3171. And the website is www.servosinjurylaw.com. And Steve, the listeners are more than welcome to give our office a call. Just call the 937-3171 number, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions they may have. They could say they heard about us on Ask the Experts, and one of us will get on the phone.
Well, I know this is going to be our last show this year. You'll be back again with us next month. And of course, we want to wish everybody a happy holiday and definitely a happy new year. And I'm so glad we have your firm as our expert in personal injury. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful holiday and a happy and healthy new year.
Same
You as
to
well,
you.
Steve. Thank you.
Everybody
See
watch.
you.
Thank you so much.
And
Take
that's
care.
it for us today, everybody. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.